Hey guys, I'm with Subed Chatterjee, the founder of Flow Zone Academy. How are you doing?
What's happening, dude? Thank you so much for having me on today.
No problem, my pleasure. So we have an interesting topic of conversation. We're going to talk about flow in the context of coaching. So I want to leave it to you. So how can we find flow in the middle of our coaching, in a day of coaching?
So, the first thing that we want to notice is what is the environment? What is the environment that you're in? Is it a rich environment? Is it a stimulating environment? Is it an environment that is pushing you forward in the right direction? So, with a coach and a coachee, it's an interesting dynamic. Essentially, it is a conversation. So it's like dialogue. So the way that you have more flow is to imagine it just as that, as a dialogue. So action, reaction. And
Mm,
so as you get into the flow of it, it's about matching the rhythms. So
mm,
it's about understanding where your coachee is coming from and trying to mirror that back at them. So
mm.
it's more about getting them to answer their own questions, right? So in the flow of coaching, you're just allowing.
Right, right. One of the biggest, I think, challenges for me when I'm coaching is all of the different distractions that might kind of take me out of just listening to you.
Mhm.
So what do you recommend as a way to, how do we eliminate all these distractions so that we're really fully present with our client?
Well, first of all, it's important to have that intention. So having that as the vision and setting that intention and then actually going for it. So for instance, if you want to be more present with your client, you have to think of where are they coming from, right? So exactly what is their frame of reference, where are they coming from, and completely understanding that. And so as we get into the coaching methods, it becomes important that it becomes a dynamic.
Mm,
So the distractions are going to come up. It's just about realizing like where can I stop this? Where can I alter this? Where can I That's the experimentation phase essentially. I have three phases in the academy and the middle portion is called experiments or experimentation. And essentially what you're doing is trying on new things, right? And to be in a focused mentality is like an identity that we've given ourselves that has to be like very narrowed in and laser like and very we give ourselves too much of a burden about it.
mhm,
Instead, it's more about control,
mm.
control of your sense of focus. Like, where is your control going? It can be on your breathing, right? And the breath can like allow you to tune more into a coachee. So
It's really,
allowing that
it sounds,
breath to emerge. Yeah.
it sounds like it's like very much a mindfulness exercise and training your mind
Yeah.
to not respond to stimulus that's coming up and just be fully present with who you're with. But then it also sounds like you mentioned something about environment. Um, and that's interesting too, is that I think some of us neglect, like, I certainly can think more about this. Like, what is the ideal environment for me to coach or consult people in?
Mm.
Um, how about for you? Like, what do you say? Maybe not. What would apply to like any coach really? Like, what's the ideal environment to coach someone in?
Mm. Well, I would say, first of all, it has to be a container of quiet space somehow. Whether that's you could be coaching someone in an environment where there's a lot of noise, but what that silence does is it really hones in that focus, that
Mm,
flow.
mm,
And so creating an environment where you're really being able to listen and not just listening on a superficial level, it's like active listening, it's like noticing their body language. What is being said without just the basic, like the gesture and the sound, right? What is being said beyond that?
A lot of coaches work from home, and and I know that this can either be good if you have a quiet space in home and you have the ability to like not to shut yourself off. I think that could be great. But I also think that it can also be a huge weakness and distraction in terms of finding and a prevention from
Yeah.
finding flow, that, you know, I think a lot of people struggle with. So what are your thoughts about working from home versus not?
So there are two different levels that apply to it. I would say that first of all, you're noticing where you're creating flow by yourself and comparing that to how you create flow in a group of people or a team, for instance. So social flow is a different kind of flow. We're giving ourselves one overarching task, right? Where it's a sense of organization with different people. So that completely changes the paradigm. So when you are a coach working from home, you have to create that same sense of connectivity that you do with other people in a big workspace with yourself.
Mm,
So it's really about understanding, like, where is your well of power? You know, how do you turn that valve of flow on in yourself? And
mm.
how can you sustain and maintain that in a longer term so you're not like a leaky bucket?
Ah, gotcha. Um, yeah, I think that makes sense as a way to look at it. Um, and so aside from working with coaching the client itself, themselves, where else can a coach find flow in their work day, aside from the coaching itself? How in these admin tasks or marketing tasks, what can we do to find more flow in this sense of stuff that we usually find draining or we hate?
Mm, right. Yeah, there's a lot of times where you're in a situation in your business where you don't really want to do that thing, and that it's a little bit overwhelming because it can take you out of flow. The fact that it's not fun. So the goal here is to make it fun for you. So whatever task that you're doing, try and gamify it. Try
Mm,
and figure out a way to make it fun for you, a challenging task that you have the right amount of skill for, right? That's the perfect balance of flow, challenge, and skill. And so when you're gamifying the situation, you're like, hey, this is fun. There's nothing to lose here. This is like, I'm leveling up. This is something to gain. And
right,
so,
right. I like that. Like you
yeah.
have to think of it as this has to be a fun activity that you're working on in terms of marketing. What I noticed is that the kind of less fun it is, and the more like kind of superficial the task is,
Mm,
the less results it's probably going to bring.
yeah.
The deeper it is and the more likely it is to find flow in it, the more likely flow conducive it is. um, I bet that also will lead to more results in terms of marketing too. For example, if you're just posting like memes on Instagram, and it's draining to you, versus if you are writing high level ultimate guides and ebooks that are 75 pages long and about all like a bunch of different things. I
Right.
bet that will give you a lot more results than these kind of superficial marketing tasks that we actually don't even like doing.
Right. And it's almost about like realizing like how people are nowadays trying to sell you automation, but recognizing like you can have that sense of automation by yourself. Like those little tasks that you're doing that may seem boring, like posting an Instagram post. I mean, make it robotic for you, you know?
Yeah,
Like already plan your post from before, like a month before, and just like being a robot, just like, brrr, you know,
you're right.
getting like, that's also making it a game in my.
Hmm. Yeah, I do the same thing. It's like there's stuff that I kind of have to do to sustain the business,
Yeah,
and but I'll have to either like figure out a way to automate it or figure out a way to outsource it so that I can
yeah,
do it as
absolutely.
little as possible, so that I can focus more on deeper things that I enjoy more. A, and then B, actually give me more results. What about, so we talked about finding flow in the context of the coaching like workday, and then what
Mm.
about like outside of work? So we're shutting off from work, and how do you find flow outside of the workday?
I think that's actually an important part of actually being a space of recovery for when you do come back to work. I think that that is a necessary phase of the flow cycle. It's the last phase of the flow cycle, which is that sense of recovery.
Mm,
And
interesting. Wait, so,
so,
so
uh,
go through the stages just so I have an
okay,
intellectual sense of it, because I like this,
great.
because I often feel like I had a really long day of work and I do want recovery, but I never really thought of it as like, okay, I'm actually looking for flow outside of work. That's cool.
Mhm.
What are the stages?
All right. So basically, we start off in the phase of struggle. So this is your monkey mind. This is your inner critic. This is your just day-to-day waking consciousness. This is beta brainwaves, like your basic waking consciousness brain. And then we go into release. So we have all these people talking about letting go, right? Surrendering to the moment, all this thing. That release is an important part of flow, that actually letting go. And I think that's where it starts off, that phase of just like creating a pattern interrupt and allowing you to have more creativity in your life.
Mm,
So flow, it has that sense of release where you're like letting it go, but then you're going into the flow state. It's almost like, if you want to imagine like the Stargate,
mm,
and you're walking through it, right? And that release is like what gets you through the portal into flow.
mm.
So as you are in flow, then that's stuff like, all the neurotransmitters like anandamide, all the dopamine, like all of these neurotransmitters that are helping you to stay there. And the release phase actually has nitric oxide, so the blood flow, it's that relaxed wakefulness, the alpha waves. And then we go into flow, which is alpha with a bit of theta. Theta waves are associated with like sleeping and dreaming too.
Mm, mm,
So it's really interesting how flow is like this space between alpha theta, which means it's a space between your subconscious and your conscious mind. So it's in that's where the flow, and what flow is gamma triggers, so little spikes of gamma waves.
mm.
And that's like that highly concentrated, the memory, the highly cognitive tasks, the kind of Dexter, boy genius type of brain, it's like the aha moment.
Mm.
So
I love
after
it.
that, after that flow is that recovery. And that's the delta. That's the dreamless sleep. You're just relaxing into it. That oxytocin, that serotonin, the the love and trust that you need, right? To just get yourself
Right.
back into the struggle mode, the hustle mode. So
Wait,
yeah, it's
you're
interesting.
doing this, it's like a cycle, the whole, like you go through this every day.
Yeah, you're constantly going through a cycle, and some people just might be stuck in a loop. They're just in beta mode, so
Mm.
they're not channeling into their relaxation. They're not letting things go, and so they're constantly stuck in struggle.
Oh, yeah, I think a lot of people are constantly stuck in struggle, um,
Yeah.
and not actually entering the flow states as you described. Um,
You know.
I'm interested. I'm personally interested in recovery. So, what are some what is like a good habit for structuring your daily routine? What would make for good recovery sessions? Like, how do you structure your daily routine to optimize for recovery?
hmm Well, I would say anything that is healing. So anything that is essentially self-appreciation, self-care, trust, activities with yourself, and
Healing is
generally,
healing is the key word, or is it like self-care, or what should we be looking for?
yeah, I would say you're essentially sinking down, you're restoring, and so that healing aspect of it, if you want to think of that as the overarching umbrella. And
Mm,
then, like, I would even so far as to say that lucid dreaming is a type of healing method,
mm,
because you are taking a glimpse into your subconscious mind,
yeah.
and
Huh.
you have mastery over that environment, so you're being able to almost become independently this creator of this dream realm experience. And
Huh.
so if you shift things around in there, there's chances you're probably going to shift things around in your conscious world, in your waking consciousness as you wake up.
Okay. Huh. Yeah, I like that you look at everything from like a neuroscience point of view, but it's also like a very it's not reductive. It's like you're looking at it, it's positive psychology meets the
Yeah.
neuroscience. So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a holistic way of looking at it. Um
Yeah. I
so
agree.
awesome. Yeah, thank you. I think this was a good like overview of flow in the context of coaching and what we can do to optimize for flow, both in our workday and outside of it. Recovery. I need to tonight. I got to think of activities for recovery because I'm starting. It's getting late in the day for me, so I'm starting to feel like I need to go into that recovery mode. So thank you so much for being on the show.
You are absolutely welcome, man. May the flow be with you.
I love it. You too.